The following video is to show how to remove and replace the main board on an Acer C733 Chromebook. First, you need to remove all of the screws from the backing plate cover here. One little trick I like to do is on this model, sometimes the screws are a little hard to get out of the holes once you've unscrewed them, so I use a little magnet here to pick them up. Just kind of set them to the side here. From there, you want to obviously remove the back cover. I have a little pry tool that I like to use. Shout out to iFixit, these little pry tools are great. Once you have the cover removed, I set it aside because on these models the serial number stays with the cover instead of the whole Chromebook. So I set these aside, especially if I'm going to transplant this board into another one so the serial number follows along with it. But we are replacing this specific main board with another used main board because if you could see there, the headphone port is broken. Yeah, there we can see. Headphone port's broken and doesn't want to recognize the headphones. We really don't have any way currently of fixing that without removing the whole board. So from here, the first thing you want to do is unplug the battery, just so we don't give it any shorts or short something out when we use the tools to remove things. So on this, it's removing this piece of fabric tape that actually works really well. Set that aside and then just unplug the battery. Since we're removing all of these things, it's a good idea just to start removing this tape. So this other piece of fabric tape here, this is the keyboard connector. On this specific model, the keyboard is the whole case. So you can't just replace the keyboard, you have to replace the whole case. So we'll unplug this connector from the daughter board over there. Sometimes my nails can do it, sometimes you got to use the pry tool. Undo that, undo this. This is the trackpad cable. Just trying to get everything out of the way. I forgot to unplug the keyboard here. This is the keyboard ribbon cable. Unplug that. Unplug the speaker connector over here. Sometimes they're small, but sometimes they don't want to come out either. Unplug up here. This is the LCD cable connector. Just a little, undo it, pull that out, kind of set that to the side over there. Also undo the ribbon cables here that go over to the daughter board. Just flip that piece up on both of them. Just kind of pull that out and set it to the side. And then the Wi-Fi card, which is now we're going to start taking out screws. So some of these have been torqued from the factory to a certain amount, and so I like to use a regular screwdriver just to get the first round of the screws out. So these screws here are the hinge. Just make sure you loosen all these. So to pull the main board out, you'll have to take out these 4 screws here. So I'll do that real quick. And actually this 5th one here needs to come out too, because you have to remove this hinge to get the whole main board out. have to grab my little magnet, pick that one up. So from here, you need to remove the screw from the Wi-Fi card. I like to keep the little connectors connected because they're sometimes a pain to get them to snap back on there. So we'll pull that out, set it to the side. And then you have to pry up the hinge over here. Sometimes it's a little tough. There we go. Pull that out of the way. And then from here, make sure all your connections are undone. And you can just slide the whole main board out. So there have these little grooves over here for the connectors. If you kind of pull up on this left end, just kind of slide it out. There is the main computer board that controls the whole Chromebook. That's basically the Chromebook. So we're gonna set that one aside because, like I said, it's got this broken headphone port. You can kind of see it, yeah, there at that angle. You can see it, it's broken. I'm gonna set that aside with the cover that it came off of because those serial numbers are connected. So after that, you'll either need to repeat the process to get a main board out of another good computer, which is what I did, or you buy another main board, but just remember that that board is associated with the serial number of the cover. So I took this one off of a good Chromebook. So you can see there the headphone port is nice and all put together. We're gonna put it in its place and then take the cover from this one as well and put it back on this Chromebook. So to get this back in, you wanna slide it back in the grooves as the other one. It does help to kind of pull some of these back, these connectors back while you're getting it, or you'll have to kind of dig them out later. So I don't really know any tricks of that yet other than like sliding it like that. We'll have to pull a couple of them back. So make sure they line up with the screws there. Before you screw it all the way down, it's a good idea just to grab these connectors so they don't get stuck under there. All right, as you see, things should just kind of go back in place. So I'm gonna put the screws back in first just to hold the board. So one goes there, one goes there, one goes there. And then you'll need to pull this hinge back down. Hopefully it lines up good. Sometimes these don't like to line up back up very good. But we will put the screws back in there. There's two of them. This one likes to fall like that. Helps to have a magnetic screwdriver, but sometimes these screwdrivers don't stay very magnetic. Like that. This one's gonna be a pain to me. It's like that. There we go. Sometimes sticking the finger there to guide it helps. Screw that one back in. I like to come back with a regular screwdriver just to make sure they're somewhat tight. You don't want to over tighten it and break the board or anything, but especially on these hinges so it opens and closes correctly. Then from here, you gotta make sure we plug everything back in. So I'm gonna start, I would suggest plug the battery in absolutely last. Just so there's no power running this board when you're connecting things. Again, my fingers in these tiny screws that are elevated. Put the Wi-Fi card back on, make sure those connectors are still connected, and then you just start plugging things back in. Got the two for the daughter board here. This other one for the daughter board. This trackpad cable, make sure that little lock is flipped up. The keyboard cable, make sure that all lines up there. And then the speaker cable. And then the LCD cable, make sure that's flipped up as well. Kind of has a little groove there. That's back in, and then we've got everything, so let's plug the battery back in. And it's a good idea to put this fabric-y tape, I don't know what exactly they call it, but it's good stuff. Put it back over that. And then put that back over that. So we've got everything plugged back in. Now let's button it back up and see what we got. Gonna snap the cover back on, make sure we got the original one for this specific board. Make sure we're putting it back on, because that serial number and that asset number, if you use asset numbers, are all attached to that board. Snap it back in place, and we get to put all these screws back in. So the next step after that is to flip it over and power it back on. It's my little note that it had a broken headphone port, and it no longer does. So one thing with these, if you remove the battery or remove parts, sometimes it's you gotta force it to turn on. So we might get lucky and get the power button. So I know I plugged the battery back in, so a lot of times you gotta get power cable and jump it that way. So plug it in, little charge lights on over there, hold down the reset, and there it is. So as you can see, you'll have to run a full wipe on the system, which generally isn't bad. So once you get that all the way through, then you've got a good working Chromebook again.